The dust of the unpaved road clung to Cora Russell's tear-stained face as she sat alone on her trunk, the afternoon sun beating down mercilessly upon her cotton bonnet. It was June 1875, and the stagecoach that had dropped her at Whispering Pines Ranch had departed hours ago, leaving only swirling dust and crushing silence in its wake. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the wrinkles from her blue calico traveling dress. The letter from Mr. Edmund Walcott had been explicit he would meet his mail-order bride at precisely noon. The sun now hung low in the western sky, painting the distant mountains in hues of amber and gold, a stark reminder that noon had long since passed. Cora wiped away another tear, determined not to succumb to despair. At 22, she had left behind everything familiar in Boston following the death of her parents to influenza. The modest inheritance had barely covered their debts, leaving her with few options in a city where an unmarried woman with no family connections faced bleak prospects. The advertisement in the newspaper had seemed like Providence itself. Rancher seeks educated, respectable wife. Comfortable home provided, passage paid. The subsequent correspondence had been brief but promising. Edmund had described himself as a hard-working man of 35, established in the Wyoming Territory with a prosperous cattle operation. His letters, while not romantic, had been courteous and direct. Now, as the shadows lengthened across the empty yard, Cora faced the crushing realization that she might have been deceived. Or worse, perhaps something had happened to her intended husband. The nearest town was 15 miles back, according to the stagecoach driver. The creak of the gate startled her from her thoughts. A tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun approached with measured strides. Not Edmund, she knew that instantly. This man was younger, his shoulders broader beneath a dust-coated canvas coat. "Madam?" His voice carried across the yard, deep but gentle. "Are you lost?" Cora straightened her spine, summoning what dignity remained after hours of waiting. "I'm Miss Russell. I was to meet Mr. Edmund Walcott here at noon." The stranger stiffened. He removed his hat, revealing sandy hair and a face weathered by sun and wind despite his relatively young age. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, regarded her with a mixture of confusion and something that looked disconcertingly like pity. "Miss Russell," he said carefully, "I'm Quentin Lawson. I manage this ranch." He hesitated, twisting the brim of his hat. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Edmund Walcott passed away 3 months ago. Pneumonia took him quick." The world seemed to tilt beneath Cora's feet. That can't be possible. I received a letter just 6 weeks ago." "Mails slow out here," Quentin said, his voice softening, "and Edmund was never much for writing. He likely sent that letter before he took ill." A wave of dizziness washed over Cora. All her careful plans, the last of her money spent on the trousseau packed in the trunk beneath her, all for nothing. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered, more to herself than to the stranger. Quentin Lawson surveyed the young woman before him. Her face, though tear-streaked and dusty, showed a quiet dignity that impressed him. He'd known about Edmund's advertisement for a bride but hadn't realized the correspondence had progressed so far. The older rancher had been a good employer if somewhat solitary in nature. "Miss Russell," he said finally, "night's coming on. Whatever needs sorting can wait until morning. Let me help you inside. The house is still standing and you look in need of rest and refreshment." Cora hesitated. Propriety demanded she decline, but the alternative, sitting alone as darkness fell in unfamiliar territory, was unthinkable. "That's very kind, Mr. Lawson, but I wouldn't wish to impose." "No imposition, madam. There's Mrs. Donnelly, the housekeeper. She lives in the back cottage. You'll be proper as Sunday service." He stepped forward, reaching for her trunk. Edmund was a good man. He wouldn't have wanted his intended left stranded at his gate. Quentin lifted her trunk with ease, gesturing toward the whitewashed ranch house that stood 100 yards up the dirt path. In the fading light, Cora could see it was modest but well-maintained, with a wide porch and curtained windows. Come along, Miss Russell. Wyoming nights get cold, even in June. With no better options before her, Cora gathered her reticule and followed the cowboy up the path. The house was simple but comfortable, with solid furniture and clean surfaces that spoke of careful tending. Mrs. Donnelly, a plump woman with graying hair and kind eyes, appeared from the kitchen, her surprise at Cora's presence quickly giving way to practical efficiency. "The poor lamb," she clucked, settling Cora at the kitchen table and placing a cup of hot tea before her. "Traveled all this way for nothing. Well, you'll stay here tonight, of course. We'll sort things in the morning." Quentin stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand. "I've got to check on a mare that's foaling," he explained. "Mrs. Donnelly will see to your needs, Miss Russell." After a simple but satisfying meal of stew and biscuits, Mrs. Donnelly showed Cora to a small bedroom at the back of the house. This was the guest room, the housekeeper explained. "Mr. Walcott kept it ready, though we rarely had visitors." Alone at last, Cora sat on the edge of the narrow bed and allowed the tears to flow freely. The magnitude of her situation crashed over her like a wave. Stranded in the Wyoming territory with barely $5 to her name, no prospects and no connections. The stagecoach wouldn't return for another week, and even if it did, she had nowhere to go. Mourning brought no solutions but did provide clarity. Over breakfast, Mrs. Donnelly filled in the gaps of Edmund Walcott's last days. He wasn't old, not really, just past 50. But winters here are harsh and pneumonia takes many, the housekeeper explained. He left the ranch to his nephew back east, but the young man has shown no interest in claiming it. Mr. Lawson's been running things in the meantime. "And Mr. Lawson," Cora asked, trying to sound merely conversational, "has he worked here long, going on 5 years now?" "Came west from Pennsylvania after the war. Good with horses, that one. Edmund relied on him completely these last few years." The sound of boots on the porch interrupted their conversation. Quentin entered, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. "Morning, ladies," he said, nodding to them both. "Miss Russell, I've been thinking about your situation. The stage won't be back through until next Friday. You're welcome to stay here until then, of course." "That's very generous," Cora replied, "but I cannot simply impose upon your hospitality without contributing. I'm capable and willing to work." Quentin studied her for a moment. "Can you cook reasonably well? I can also keep accounts, and I'm handy with a needle." A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Mrs. Donnelly could use help with the cooking. We've got 6 ranch hands to feed, plus ourselves." Mrs. Donnelly nodded enthusiastically. "Indeed I could. These cowboys eat like they've got hollow legs." "Then it's settled," Quentin said. "You'll help Mrs. Donnelly, and we'll provide room and board until the stage returns. After that." He left the sentence unfinished. After that, Cora thought, she would face another impossible decision. The week passed in a blur of activity. Cora rose early each morning to help Mrs. Donnelly prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. The work was harder than anything she'd done in Boston, but there was satisfaction in it. The cowboys were respectful, if curious about her presence, and she found herself enjoying their simple appreciation of well-prepared meals. Quentin Lawson remained something of a mystery. He was unfailingly polite, but maintained a careful distance. Cora often caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unreadable. On her 4th day at the ranch, Cora was kneading bread dough when Quentin entered the kitchen, his expression troubled. "Miss Russell, could I have a word?" She wiped her hands on her apron, conscious of the flour dusting her cheeks. "Of course, Mr. Lawson." He led her to Edmund's study, a small room lined with bookshelves. "I received this telegram from Edmund's nephew," he said, handing her a piece of paper. "He's decided to sell the ranch." Cora scanned the brief message, her heart sinking. "I see. When will he arrive?" "He's not coming. He's authorized me to handle everything, find a buyer, settle accounts." Quentin ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of agitation. "The thing is, Miss Russell, I've been saving to buy my own place someday. I've got a fair amount set aside, but not enough for a spread like this." "I'm sorry to hear that," Cora said quietly. "You seem to care deeply for this ranch." "I do." His blue eyes met hers directly. "Which brings me to a proposition. The bank in Laramie might lend me the remainder if I can show the operation is stable. Having a wife would help my case considerably." Cora felt her cheeks flame. "Mr. Lawson, are you proposing marriage to me?" "A business arrangement," he clarified quickly. "You need security. I need a wife to satisfy the bank's requirements for stability. It needn't be more than that." The practical side of Cora recognized the sense in his offer. The emotional side recoiled at the cold calculation of it. "I came here expecting to marry a stranger," she said slowly. "But I hoped for a genuine marriage, not merely a business transaction." Something flickered in Quentin's eyes, disappointment, perhaps. "I understand. It was presumptuous of me to suggest it." "I didn't say no," Cora replied, "but I would need to know more about you, Mr. Lawson. Marriage, even one of convenience, is not something I take lightly." "Fair enough," he gestured to a chair. "What would you like to know?" For the next hour they talked. Quentin spoke of his childhood in Pennsylvania, his service in the Union Army despite being barely 18 when the war ended, and his journey west seeking something he couldn't quite name. "I found it here," he said, gazing out the window at the rolling grasslands. "A purpose. This land gets under your skin, becomes part of you. I can't imagine being anywhere else now." "You speak of it beautifully," Cora observed. "Like a poet rather than a cowboy," he laughed, a warm sound that transformed his features. "Don't let the hands hear you say that. I'd never live it down." By the time their conversation concluded, the sun was setting. No promises had been made, but something had shifted between them, a tentative bridge spanning the gap of their circumstances. The next day, Cora found herself watching Quentin as he worked with a skittish young horse in the corral. His patience was remarkable, his movements confident but never threatening. The horse gradually yielded to his gentle persistence, allowing Quentin to place a saddle on its back for the first time. "He has a way with them," Mrs. Donnelly observed, appearing at Cora's side. "The troubled ones especially, says they just need someone to believe in them." "He seems a good man," Cora ventured. "The best," Mrs. Donnelly agreed. "Too much alone, though, carries old hurts like some men carry guns, always ready, always wary." That evening, Cora made her decision. She found Quentin on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. "Your offer," she said without preamble. "I've considered it carefully." He turned, his expression carefully neutral. "And I accept with conditions. First, we will have a proper courtship, even if abbreviated. Second, while I understand this begins as a practical arrangement, I would hope that respect and friendship might develop. And third, I would be a true partner in the ranch, not merely a convenience for the bank's approval." Quentin studied her face in the fading light. "Those are reasonable terms, Miss Russell." "Cora," she corrected him. "If we're to be married, you should use my given name." "Cora," he repeated, and she was surprised by how pleasant her name sounded in his deep voice. "And I'm Quentin, though most just call me Quint." "Quint," she tested the name. "When shall we be married? The circuit preacher comes through next month." "Would that suit?" she nodded, suddenly overcome by the enormity of what she'd agreed to. "Yes, that would be suitable." The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. Word spread quickly among the neighboring ranches that Quentin Lawson was to marry the Eastern woman who'd arrived as Edmund Walcott's mail-order bride. The ladies from nearby homesteads paid calling visits, curious to meet Cora and generous with advice about ranch life. True to his word, Quint courted her properly. Each evening after supper, they would sit on the porch and talk. He showed her the boundaries of the ranch, taught her to ride Western style rather than side saddle, and introduced her to every aspect of the operation. "If we're to be partners," he explained, "you need to understand the business." Cora found herself genuinely interested in the workings of the ranch. Her education had prepared her for a genteel life in Boston society, but she discovered an aptitude for the practical matters of running a cattle operation. As the wedding day approached, Cora faced a new anxiety. Their marriage might begin as a practical arrangement, but it would include all aspects of married life. The prospect both terrified and intrigued her. Mrs. Donnelly, perceptive as always, addressed the matter obliquely while helping Cora alter one of her dresses for the wedding. "Quint's a gentle soul beneath that weathered exterior," she said, carefully pinning a seam. "Patient, too, he won't rush you into anything you're not ready for." Cora blushed furiously. "Mrs. Donnelly, I couldn't possibly discuss such things. No need for discussion. Just remember that marriage takes time to find its footing. Like breaking a horse, rushing only causes trouble." The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright. The ceremony itself was simple, held in the ranch's main room with the neighbors and hands in attendance. Cora wore her best dress, a dove-gray silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. Quint had purchased a new shirt and string tie for the occasion, his usually tousled hair neatly combed. The preacher was brief but sincere. When Quint slipped a simple gold band onto Cora's finger, his hand trembled slightly. The gesture touched her more deeply than any flowery declaration might have. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher announced. "You may kiss your bride." Quint hesitated, then leaned forward to place a chaste kiss on Cora's lips. Brief as it was, she felt a surprising warmth spread through her. The celebration that followed was jubilant, with food, music, and dancing continuing well into the evening. As darkness fell, the guests gradually departed, leaving the newlyweds standing somewhat awkwardly in their own home. "Well, Mrs. Lawson," Quint said finally, "it appears we've survived our wedding day." "Indeed we have, Mr. Lawson," she replied, grateful for his attempt to ease the tension. "And quite successfully, I think." He cleared his throat. "I've moved my things to the main bedroom. I've prepared the small room off the study for myself." Cora stared at him in confusion. "But surely as husband and wife, as I said before," he interrupted gently, "this arrangement needn't be more than you're comfortable with. We have time to know one another better." His consideration both relieved and oddly disappointed her. "That's very thoughtful." "I meant what I said during our vows," Quint added. "I will honor and respect you, Cora, always." That night, lying alone in the large bed that had once belonged to Edmund Walcott, Cora reflected on the strange path that had led her here. She had come to Wyoming to marry one man and had ended up the wife of another. The practical arrangement she had agreed to suddenly seemed far more complicated than she had anticipated. The following weeks established a new routine. Cora continued to assist Mrs. Donnelly with household management, but also began learning the business side of the ranch. Quint proved an excellent teacher, patient with her questions and genuinely appreciative of her quick mind. "You've got a head for figures," he commented one evening as they reviewed the ledgers together. "Better than mine, truth be told." "My father insisted I learn bookkeeping," she explained. "He said a woman should always understand money matters even if society deemed it unfeminine." "Wise man, your father." Quint's fingers brushed hers as he turned a page, and the brief contact sent an unexpected thrill through her. As summer gave way to autumn, their relationship evolved in small, almost imperceptible ways. Quint began joining Cora for an evening stroll after supper. She found reasons to visit him in the stables. Their conversations deepened, extending beyond the practicalities of ranch management to personal hopes and fears. One crisp October evening, they sat before the fireplace, Cora mending a shirt while Quint cleaned his saddle. The comfortable silence between them was broken when Quint suddenly asked, "Are you happy here, Cora?" The question startled her. "Yes," she replied after a moment's reflection. "I believe I am. Why do you ask?" He kept his eyes on his work. "Sometimes I wonder if you regret our arrangement. If you miss Boston and the life you might have had there." "Boston holds painful memories for me," she said quietly. "My parents' deaths are financial ruin. Here I've found purpose and companionship." Quint finally looked up, his blue eyes serious. "I'm glad." "I've come to value your companionship greatly." Something in his tone made her heart quicken. "As I value yours." Later that night, Cora lay awake, reflecting on their exchange. Their marriage of convenience had developed into a genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and growing affection. Yet something was missing: the intimacy that should naturally exist between husband and wife. The opportunity to address this came unexpectedly. Early November brought the first significant snowfall, transforming the landscape into a vast white expanse. Quint returned from checking the cattle in the north pasture, soaked through and shivering. "The creek's frozen already," he reported, struggling to remove his snow-crusted boots. "Had to break through the ice for the stock to water." Cora immediately prepared a hot bath, something Quint rarely indulged in. "You need to warm up before you catch your death," she insisted, overriding his protests. While he bathed, she laid out dry clothes and built up the fire in their bedroom, the one she still occupied alone. When Quint emerged from the washroom, color returning to his face, he stopped short at seeing her in what he still considered his wife's private domain. "I thought you might benefit from the fire," she explained, suddenly shy. "The rest of the house is drafty with this wind." "Thank you," he said, keeping a careful distance. "I'll just get dressed and leave you to your privacy." "Quint," she said before she could lose her nerve, "we've been married nearly 4 months." He froze, clean shirt in hand. "Yes. I wonder if perhaps it's time we—" "That is to say, a true marriage involves—" Cora felt heat rise in her cheeks. Understanding dawned in Quint's eyes, followed by something that looked remarkably like hope. "Cora, are you suggesting what I think you are?" "I'm saying that I married you expecting a complete marriage," she managed, looking directly at him despite her embarrassment. "And I find that I care for you, Quint, more than I anticipated when we made our arrangement." He set down the shirt and moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. "I've cared for you from the moment I found you sitting on that trunk at the gate," he admitted, "but I didn't want to press you to make you feel obligated." "I don't feel obligated," she whispered. "I believe I'm falling in love with you, Quentin Lawson." The wonder that spread across his face was worth every moment of vulnerability. He reached out slowly, as if she might startle like one of his skittish colts, and touched her cheek. "I've been in love with you for months," he confessed. Afraid to speak it, afraid to hope you might one day return the feeling. When he finally kissed her, it bore no resemblance to the chaste peck they'd shared at their wedding. This was a kiss of longing fulfilled, of restraint finally abandoned. Cora found herself responding with a passion she hadn't known she possessed. That night, their marriage was truly consummated. Quint's tenderness and consideration touched Cora deeply, and the physical expression of their feelings forged a bond that transcended their practical beginnings. As winter settled over the Wyoming territory, the Lawson Ranch found a new rhythm. Quint and Cora worked side by side during the day, he managing the outdoor operations, she overseeing the household and accounts. Their evenings were spent in comfortable companionship that now extended into nights of shared warmth and growing passion. Spring brought exciting news. The bank had approved their loan to purchase the ranch outright from Edmund's nephew. The property would officially be theirs, the culmination of their partnership in business and in life. "We should celebrate," Quint suggested, swinging Cora around the kitchen after receiving the banker's letter. "I have news that might add to the celebration," she replied, a secretive smile playing at her lips. "I visited Dr. Haggerty in town yesterday." Quint set her down gently, his expression turning to concern. "Are you unwell?" "Quite the opposite." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're to have a child, Quint, in late autumn." The joy that transformed his features was everything Cora could have hoped for. He dropped to his knees before her, pressing his face against her middle. "A child," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Our child." As the pregnancy progressed, Quint became even more protective, insisting on hiring additional help for the household. Mrs. Donnelly clucked approvingly at his attentiveness, though she occasionally had to remind him that women have been having babies since Eve, young man, and Mrs. Lawson is strong as they come. Their son was born on a clear November night, exactly 1 year after the snowstorm that had brought them together as true husband and wife. They named him Edward Quinn Lawson, Edward after Cora's father, Quinn a variation of Quentin. "He's perfect," Quint whispered, cradling his newborn son with hands that could break a wild horse but now trembled with the precious weight they held. "He is," Cora agreed, exhausted but radiant. "And so is this life we've built together." By the child's first birthday, the Lawson Ranch had expanded its operations, adding sheep to their cattle business at Cora's suggestion. The diversification proved wise when cattle prices dropped temporarily. "My brilliant wife," Quint would say proudly to anyone who would listen. "She's got the business sense of a Rockefeller with the heart of an angel." On a warm June afternoon 5 years after Cora had first arrived at the ranch gate, she sat on the porch swing, watching Quint teach little Edward to ride his pony. Her hand rested protectively on her swollen belly, where their second child, a daughter, she was certain grew stronger each day. Mrs. Donnelly joined her, bearing glasses of lemonade. "Who would have thought," the older woman mused, "that Mr. Edmund's final act of matchmaking would turn out so well, even if it wasn't quite what he planned?" "Providence works in mysterious ways," Cora replied, smiling as Quint caught their son from sliding off the pony. "I came here expecting one life and found another entirely." "A better one, I hope," Cora considered the question seriously. "Different, harder in some ways. I never imagined I'd be helping birth calves or negotiating wool prices, but infinitely richer." As if sensing her gaze, Quint looked up and waved. The love in his eyes, visible even at a distance, sent warmth spreading through Cora's chest. "I was forgotten at the gate that day," she said softly, left alone and uncertain. But then Quint opened it, and in doing so, he opened a future I couldn't have imagined. He offered his life alongside mine, and together, we've created something beautiful. Little Edward's delighted laughter rang out as the pony trotted in a circle, Quint's hand steady on the lead rope. Soon their family would grow again, the ranch would continue to prosper, and the life they'd built together would deepen its roots in the Wyoming soil. Cora had traveled west seeking security and found love instead. The bride forgotten at the gate had become the heart of a thriving ranch and family. As she sipped her lemonade and watched her husband and son, she silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought her to this place, this man, this life that had become more precious to her than anything she could have dreamed in her Boston days. The future stretched before them like the vast Wyoming sky wide open, full of promise and beautifully, perfectly theirs.